Video of the picnic our Hispanic ministry had last week. So thank you to everybody who was a part of that. It was a great time. I was able to be here and visit with them, and just grateful for the work that they do here, and for Carlinos and his wife and the things that they're doing to help lead that Hispanic ministry. So, wow. Are you glad to be here today? It's a good day, isn't it? Just things are going well. We did forget early in the service. Of course, we got some different moving parts today, but today is, we forgot the offering, which we're not going to, thank you. We're not going to take a lot of time on that, but at our church, there's 3 easy ways to give. There's these boxes on the back here, and then in the lobby outside. Also, if you would like to give through the church app, you can do that, or lantanagive.church. 3 easy ways to give that way. And just remember that God loves a cheerful giver. And if you're going to give, then give out of the abundance of your... We're trying to talk about what it means to give out of an abundance mindset rather than a poverty mindset. Because God has all things and wants all things for you. So remember that as you're giving. Also, wanted to remind you about, or let you know, it was a great time yesterday with Uplift, and we know that with the things that are going on with in politics, they're not getting the SNAP program and the different things going on. So we did have some extra people yesterday. We made a record, over 1,000 that we were able to feed, which was good. It was a record for us. But we invited every single one of them to come back today for you probably saw Tom out in the front. He's making some bratwurst and some hot dogs and stuff. So, we're going to, if you're around today, he would love to have your help, I'm sure. But also, remember, we want to serve our guests first. And then if there's anything left after that, then obviously you guys, because we all love a good bratwurst, right? We're going to serve the guests first, though. And if there's enough, then, you guys can have some too. But it's a good time for us to be able to do that. Well, I'm excited to continue talking about the family of God. I'll not be able to do that next week because Dr. David Graves is going to be here doing some revival services with us, and we're excited about that. It's going to be a very, very good time. He's a tremendous speaker, by the way. If you've never heard him speak, he does such a good job, and I can't wait to do that. But today, we're talking about the family of God. And last week, we talked a little bit about justice and what it means to move from into this mindset of doing something, right? From just knowing how to do something or knowing what it means to be a Christian or knowing how to be a Christian into what it looks like to do the work of being a Christian. And I don't want you to be confused thinking that there is work you can do to make yourself a Christian, because that's not the way the Holy Spirit works in us. He doesn't give us a list of things to do, and then one day you've checked all those boxes and you say, oh, now I'm a Christian. The way the Holy Spirit works is after He changes your heart, then out of that comes what Paul calls the fruits of the Spirit, for instance, and love and joy and peace and patience. It's just a way that we live, and one of those things is doing stuff for other people. So today we're going to take this same kind of a posture. Last week we talked about hospitality and what that looks like to invite people in. This week we're going to take that same posture and talk about what it looks like to take that across the street. Because we also need to be doing work. And it's what we did when we did the Monster Mile for the event over in Lantana. For their Halloween event, we went in and we were a light in that darkness, right? We were trying to take the gospel to the people. So we have a commitment to do justice. If you remember that from last week, we looked at Micah, to do justice and to learn love mercy. It doesn't happen only in our home, but it's also going to happen in the street. So I want to kind of help make that transition today. We're making a pivot from knowing to doing. From knowing to doing. My goal last week and in the weeks leading up to Advent is I want us to learn to do more than vaguely commit to being more compassionate. I think that we can do compassion, like we have compassion for people, but we need to move into a place that we're prepared to take a specific action. what does it mean to be compassionate? I want us to prepare for the fact, the idea that there is a cost involved in this. I think that's when some of us are like, oh, wait a minute. I thought it was free to be a Christian. Well, it is. Jesus freely invites us in, but then he asks something of us. And that is what we talked about last week, to do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. I want us to prepare for the cost. You know, we tend to try to tell people a story of a time that we did so-and-so or such and such. Sorry, I must have a technical thing going on. All right, how's that? Okay, we tend to talk about a time that we did something, right? And you guys do that, I do that. We tell stories. And as we get older, we tell the same story over and over and over. But we like to tell the story. We want people to know what it is that we've done. The problem is sometimes we become the hero of our own story. We become the hero. Look what I did. But we got to be careful, because really what Jesus is calling us to is not to be a hero. To realize that there is a cost. It's going to cost us some time to do justice. It's going to cost us our resources to love mercy. It's going to cost us being inconvenienced. But there is a reward to that. It's not all done for naught. There is the connection with people that we get to build. There is a connection that we get to tell them who Jesus is. There is joy that comes with that. There is living in the presence of God that comes with that. It's not just a cost. There is a reward, but we often stop at the cost. So before we dive in today, just as a reminder, I want to emphasize that next week for revival, I want Dr. Graves to come and not find a church that needs to be revived. I want him to find that we have been revived. We are a church that is in revival, that God's people are living like Jesus, so lives are changed, that God's people here are doing the work of being a Christian. And then next week it'll be Sunday morning and evening, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday evening. So 5 services. I would encourage you to be here for all of those as much as is possible. Dr. Downs, our former DS, would say, unless you're providentially hindered. That's how I knew he really, really wanted me at a meeting. Unless you're providentially hindered, Cal, I need you to be there. So, we're going to talk today a little bit about mercy. And I'm going to read one of the most famous stories in all of the Bible. And since I'm one-handed today, I'm not even going to try to do that. I'm just going to read it off my screen here. But we're going to read the story of the Good Samaritan. A lot of us know the story. Even if you've never read the story of the Good Samaritan, you've heard that mentioned in current cultural context, right? Luke chapter 10. We're going to start with verse 30. By the way, the notes for the message today are in our church's app, also in the Bible app. But you can follow along with me as we read this. Luke chapter 10. Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers, who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, 'Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back.' So Jesus asked the question, 'Which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers?' He said, 'The one who showed him mercy.' And Jesus said to him, 'You go and do likewise.'" Story we've heard a lot, and so I'm not going to go too much into the context of this story, but just so we are all on the same page, this story would have been shocking because the priests and the Levites in this story, they're the good guys. they're the guys that you would assume would stop. So right off the bat, Jesus tells them a story, and their heroes, the cultural heroes, they didn't stop. They didn't do anything. Everyone would have expected them to help. And then you could give them some excuses because, on the other hand, that they had reasons not to touch a bleeding body or a dead body. They didn't know if it was dead or not. Because if you did that, then you become ceremonially unclean according to their law, and you would not have been able to go in the temple or worship God. So they were trying to do that. The problem for us as we look is that they chose ritual purity over human need. It's one of the things that Jesus tried to get them to understand, that serving the people was more important than following the law. It was doing for the people that he was trying to get them to do. Another shocking thing would have been that he was a Samaritan. And in case you didn't know, there would have been centuries of ethnic hostility between the Samaritans and the Jews. They would have been fighting for a very, very long time. They would have hated each other with a depth of hatred that we probably wouldn't even understand today. It was a very significant hate. So what Jesus did was made the despised person the hero of the story. The enemy becomes the one who saves them. He's the one who got the mercy right. It wasn't the religious professional. It was the outsider who saw the person on the road as a human being. So it would have been a shocking story just in general. And the question that spurred this story, they said, "Who is my neighbor?" Jesus is trying to help them understand who their neighbor is. So I want to show you today 4 actions that define mercy. And remember, we're building on last week: to love justice, to do mercy, to walk humbly. To do justice, to love mercy, to walk humbly. So the first action that defines mercy it starts with see. We're going to see it. This is mercy will start with attention. Paying attention to your surroundings, paying attention to the people. You can't love what you won't see. And this is taking the idea of love from just an idea or just an emotion to something that God has called us to do. And when we say at our church that we love like Jesus so lives are changed, it doesn't mean that we just feel good about you when you come. It doesn't mean that when we see you, we are full of emotion for you. Love, and this has been a while, we defined love as a church as to seek the well-being of others. So if we're actually seeking others' well-being, then their lives are changed because they see acts of mercy completed by us as a church. So he saw him. If the phrase is repeated, the first few verses, when he's talking about the priest, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. When he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, when he saw him, he had compassion. So the thing is that all 3 men saw him. They all saw. The Levite saw, and he looked away. The priest saw, and he looked away. But the Samaritan saw and was moved to compassion. Mercy begins with attention. Who in your life are you seeing, and who in your life are you choosing not to see? When you look around you and you see somebody, are you seeing the people who are hurting? Are you seeing the people who are struggling? Are you seeing the people who have a need? This is one of the cultural things. I was laughing with a friend of mine about this past week. Very often when you see somebody, you say, "Hey, how are you doing?" "I'm good. How are you doing?" You guys know the drill. We do it all the time. "I'm good." "You doing good?" "Yeah, I'm good." It's like a thing. We say it. And you could totally not be good at all. You could like have a broken arm. You're like, I'm good. A little broken arm, but it's fine. Like, I'm good. Are we really wanting to know if somebody's good or not? Do we really want to know? Now, I'm not saying we should take that cultural thing away, because it is pleasantries that we do need to exchange, engaging a conversation, things like that. But I can tell you that, and I'm sure it's because I'm a pastor, when I say, "How are you?" very often people will say, Oh, Pastor, let me tell you. And they'll tell me how they're doing. People that know I'm a pastor. The ones that don't, they're like, oh, I'm good. So I've learned to see them and to say, I don't think so. Because I see you. And here's the incredible thing about being filled with the Spirit. I don't have some kind of magical power, but the Holy Spirit will prompt me and say, no, they're not good. Are you seeing them? Are we seeing them? All three men saw somebody who was wounded, but only one acted on it. So what are the barriers to our seeing? What blocks our vision? Why do we pass by? How is it that we see but really not see? Now, a lot of guys here will admit that they hear, but they don't really hear. I can hear people talking in my house all the time, but I don't always hear what they're saying, right? And then, of course, my kids or my wife will be like, did you hear me? I heard you talking. I didn't hear the words. It's kind of that thing. We all do this, though. We see, but we're not seeing. We see, but we're not perceiving what's going on. So the barriers, as I see them here, one is hurry. The priest and the Levite, they were going somewhere important. They had probably had temple duties. They had religious obligations. They had places to be. Sounds like our lives, right? We have somewhere to be. We've got something to do. We have somebody to see. I'm running late. We do not give ourselves margin to notice other people. I want to tell you that you should build margin into your life. And when I say margin, you remember when we used to write on papers? I don't know that people write on the 3-ring binder kind of papers anymore. Some people do. So there's margins on the side, right? You have space. Then if you come in later, you're like, oh, I forgot to write a little note in that space and that margin. It gives us extra space. Are we building margin into our lives? Or do you have an appointment at 10 o'clock and you leave so that you walk in the door at 10 o'clock? Or are you giving yourself some margin? You walk in 5 minutes early. The thing about our lives is we need to learn to build in margin. Because when we're in a hurry, we're not able to see like we should. We don't see what God wants us to see. The next thing is bias. Another barrier, bias. The Samaritan had every reason not to help. Our assumption is that this was a Jewish man who's lying on this road. Somebody that his group despised, and for all he knew and believed, they also despised him. Why would I help him? That guy hates me. I've never seen him, but he's my enemy. I despise that guy. He had a bias. Another problem we have is we let our prejudice, our human prejudice, creep into the way we perceive other people. We see them, but we don't see them. Or maybe we see them and we think, oh, that was his fault anyway. We see them and we're prejudiced. We see them and we say, oh, they don't look like me. It's not my kind of people. We see them and we say, oh, it's probably their own fault. What biases do we have? Listen, we all have a bias. We have to learn to overcome our bias because that bias is not from God. All right, the next thing is fatigue, the third one. This is a barrier, fatigue. When I was playing high school sports, I remember our coaches must have been a 90s thing because they would always put on the wall, fatigue makes cowards of us all. You guys remember that? Fatigue makes cowards of us all. I've always remembered that. Fatigue. Sometimes we don't see people because we're tired. Sometimes we get compassion fatigue. We've seen so much need that we're numb to it. Be careful with that fatigue. You know what helps with not being fatigued? Margin. You build some margin into your life. Allow yourself some space to take a nap when you need to take a nap, if your work allows it. Allow yourself some space to be early to an event so that you're not always so rushed and so hurried and so tired. I know I do this. You guys do it too. When you get home at night, you're like, oh, I'm so tired. How can we learn to see as a spiritual practice? God has asked me next year to practice waiting on Him. And I'm not talking about like sit in my chair and wait on him to do something. I'm talking about like practicing the presence of God, to attend to his presence in my life. And I'm just sharing personally because my devotion life has become so mechanical. And I don't feel like my prayer life is. Like I pray all the time, but I just get up and I do the same thing. And I've been reading the Bible through in a year for several years now. And I'm like, it just has become a mechanic, like a thing that I do. And God said, you're not spending time with me doing that. So he's asked me to practice the presence, to wait on God, which there's a tremendous book, by the way, that Andrew Murray wrote called Waiting on God. I'll be reading that all next year. We need to learn to practice spiritual things. And seeing can be one of those. Seeing can be a spiritual practice. Paying attention to people around us, really seeing them. I believe that can be an act of worship as we participate in what God is doing because we saw somebody who needed to be seen. The Samaritan saw and had compassion. Now, the interesting thing is the Greek word here is more than just noticed the guy. He felt the man's pain. In other words, he had a visceral reaction in his gut when he saw him. He saw him. He had compassion for him. This is the kind of seeing that Jesus is calling us to. Not just an awareness, but an attention that moves us. Right? Remember, we're focused on mercy today. So the question is, who are people that we're not seeing? Who are we passing by every day? A coworker eating lunch by themselves, an elderly neighbor with an overgrown lawn. I don't know. Who is it that we are seeing? Jesus asks us to really see them. But remember that seeing isn't enough. The priest and the Levite saw. The question is, will you stop? Which is the next point. Stop. Mercy will interrupt your plans. Just so you know, if you're going to practice mercy, it's going to interrupt your plans. There's never a good time. Have you noticed that? Somebody needs something and it is not a good time. I've got some stuff going on right now. I can't stop what I'm doing. I have things that are happening. I can't stop. In verse 34, it says that the Samaritan went to him. He didn't just see from a distance. He closed the distance. He went to him. He stopped. He changed his plans. He changed his navigation. He all of a sudden was doing what needed to be done to show mercy rather than continuing on with his busy day. He closed the distance. There's a cost to stopping. Sometimes it's time. So I put love is spelled T-I-M-E. The Samaritan was on a journey. He had somewhere to be. And now he has to stop. He has to get off his animal. He has to get in the dirt. He has to touch a bloody man. He has to invest time and resources. The mercy for this Samaritan was not free. Mercy will cost. It's going to disrupt your schedule. It requires us to realize that whatever we were planning on doing is not as important as the mercy that God is calling us to do. Why is this so hard for us? Our culture is obsessed with efficiency. We're obsessed with productivity. We're obsessed with optimization. I don't know if you guys saw this last week. I saw it. I think it just happened last week. There's a company that has started selling pre-orders for 2026, a robot that will do chores. I'm telling you the truth. And they have videos of this robot doing laundry, doing the dishes, sweeping the floor. $20,000, and you can further optimize your life. We are obsessed with. I'm telling some of you guys are like, wait a minute, can I afford $20,000? We are obsessed with productivity, with optimizing our time, with how can we be more efficient with our time. Sometimes God is asking us not to accomplish a checklist of things, but to pay attention to our surroundings. Because in the middle of our busyness, somebody's going to need our help. In the middle of our busyness, somebody's going to call on us. And we have a choice. Will we stop or not? Proximity stirs action. A principle that the Samaritan teaches us is that proximity stirs action. Proximity before policy. He didn't stand at a distance and try to figure out a systematic solution to help this highway robbery guy. He drew near first. He got close enough to see the man. He was close enough to hear his groans. He was close enough to touch his wounds. It was proximity. We live in a world where we debate from distance. We live in a world of keyboard warriors. And sadly, long-distance shots now. And nobody willing to get up close and to have a discussion. I don't understand why. Proximity will change things. You know, I remember, I think I've said this before, whenever I was growing up, if you wanted to either take a girl on a date or break up with the girl, you did it in person. You had to do it in person. Because if you called them on the phone, that was the coward's way. Couldn't call them on the phone, had to do it in person. And then when texting was invented, now you have to call them on the phone rather than text them a breakup or a date, right? Things have changed. Proximity causes us, if you had a disagreement with somebody, you get close, you have a discussion in person, and tone changes. Understanding happens. It's incredible what will happen. Proximity stirs action. Jesus uses this story and tells us, close the distance, kneel down, and see if a person is hurting. Check in with them. And listen, this Samaritan's behavior was risky. It wasn't safe. They were on a dangerous road. Jesus was talking about a road that they would have known to be dangerous. They were on a dangerous road that this could have been a trap. They could have put a body out there to see if somebody would stop and check on it. He could have checked on this man and this man gotten angry at him. It was a risky behavior, but the Samaritan stopped anyway because mercy isn't calculated. We can't calculate mercy. Don't misunderstand. I don't think that you have to stop for every single thing. I don't think you have to do every single thing. We need healthy boundaries. We don't have time for that. But are we having margin in our lives to allow us an interruption? So, the Samaritan saw, the Samaritan stopped, and he served is the last one. There's a cost to mercy. Mercy is practical, not theoretical. We like to talk about mercy as something that we, like I was talking in the beginning, we've become the hero. Like, oh, I remember this one time I did mercy. Like it's become something that's kind of far off, a story that we tell or a story that we've heard. Mercy's practical. And let's look at what it cost the Samaritan. In verse 34, it says, he went to him, he bound his wounds, poured oil and wine, then set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. I don't know if you're paying attention to all the things there. He gave oil and wine. It was his own supply. It was like a first aid kit. He gave him probably what he had taken for his journey. So it would have cost him that. And then he gave him bandages. Where did he get bandages? Does anybody, well, some of you maybe do. I do not carry a first aid kit with me. I don't have bandages. If you ask for bandages, we're going to have to stop somewhere and get them. I'm sure he didn't have bandages with him. So he probably was using clothes, maybe. And they didn't have a lot of changes of clothes, maybe his next day's clothes or something. I don't know. And then he had to give up his ride. Now he's walking, and the man is riding. And then he had to give up money for the inn. And on top of that, it was 2 days' wage, 2 denarii, 2 days' wage. It wasn't pocket change. It wasn't like he had a 20 and said, here, keep the change. Like it was 2 days' worth of earning that he would have given him. And then it took him time because he stayed to take care of the man. Mercy is practical and specific. The Samaritan didn't just pray for the man, though he probably did, and that's a good practice. He also didn't feel bad for him, Though compassion does matter, we need to have compassion, he did something tangible. He met real needs. And I hope you guys are understanding that this is what I want our church to get to. I want us to get beyond just knowing about it, into doing it. I want to get into the place where we are doing practical things. And that's what happened here. He did something tangible. Oil and wine to soothe his wounds, transportation, bondages, paying for the inn. When we see somebody struggling, our question should be, what really can I do to help? And here's another thing, though. If somebody asks you what they can do to help, let them help. How many times have somebody asked you, they said to you, hey, do you have anything you need? No, I'm fine. And in the back of your mind, you're going, man, I got so many things that I need. If only. That's happened to and sometimes I feel bad. I'm like putting myself on somebody like, I know that you need something. I'm going to help you, but I don't want to just random help you. Tell me how to help you. Right? So it's okay. Like we're part of the family of God. We're talking about that. We're family. How can we help? And then be willing to give an answer about how somebody can help. We do want to pray. We do want to have compassion, but we want to do something. And then I said something earlier about mercy being worship. I'm going to read to you why I believe that. In Isaiah chapter 58, Isaiah wrote this, God's words. Is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of the wickedness, to undo the straps of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, to break every yoke. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, to bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover him, and not hide yourself from your own flesh. God is saying to his people, worship isn't just about religious rituals. It's not only fasting and prayers and ceremonies. What I want is for you to serve people in practical ways. Feed the hungry. Shelter the homeless. Help the oppressed. Mercy isn't separate from worship. Mercy is worship. Because when we do those things, we're doing them for God. So do mercy. It's something practical we can do. Bring the homeless poor into your house. How many of you done that? Like, that's not safe. Don't go find somebody, bring them into your house and say, the pastor said, listen to the Holy Spirit. Right? Pay attention to what God's telling you, because he is going to direct you. Here's the question, though. When you see someone in need, what are we prepared to do? Mercy doesn't wait for someone else to ask. Mercy acts. Whatever it is. If it's a meal, if it's a ride, if it's your skills, if it's your time. Mercy's tangible. It's something we can do. It's going to cost us something. We're finding that out. The Samaritan saw, he stopped, and he served, but there was one more. This last one I call sustain. Sustain. Mercy plans for tomorrow. Compassion returns. Listen, the Samaritan's help continued. Verse 35, the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave to the innkeeper and said, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back. I think we overlook that part of the story sometimes because it's pretty significant. He planned for tomorrow. Helping in crisis is one thing. Helping over a period of time is something entirely different. Helping in an emergency is important. It does save lives. It is something that is good, but you need to remember that things don't happen overnight. Restoration, it takes time. It's going to cost an investment of time. It's going to require you to stay involved. The wounded man couldn't just show up, stay one night in the inn, and then he was gone. Like he wasn't going to be healed the next day. We don't know. It could have been days. It could have been weeks. He was bad enough that they thought he might be dead. He needed someone to commit to his long-term well-being. It's called sustaining mercy. Sustaining mercy. And I think we need to learn to do that. You know, have you ever noticed that at funerals, and I'm not saying I'm better at this, I'm trying to be better, but for a funeral, for instance, when somebody has a loved one who passes away, the church, man, and friends, they show up, and they bring in meals, and they're checking on them, and they're taking care of them. But then what happens 2 months later? Where is everybody 2 months later? What are we doing as acts of mercy 2 months later? And that's a good example as a funeral, but staying involved, continuing to do it. I can give you a great example from our church, the uplift that we did yesterday. There were times in the beginning that we were wondering, should we keep doing this? Because we had all this food, and we'd have 100 people show up. And then sometimes 50 people. There was a couple times we would have 10 or 12 cars. What are we going to do with all this food? We don't know what to do. We're trying to call friends and stuff. But as we stayed after it, and we were consistent, and we continued to do it, and now several years later, yesterday, especially when food is potentially going to be scarce because of what's going on with the government shutdown, we had over 1,000 people that we were able to serve. It takes time. It takes an investment, and it's going to cost something. And this is one way that the church is doing this, and you can be involved in that. But what are you doing in your personal life? How are you sustaining mercy with people that you know? 3 elements in sustaining mercy. The first thing is he recruited help. He didn't do it himself. He involved the innkeeper, right? The second thing is he committed his resources. 2 days' wages. 2 days' wages would be, especially for a lot of people who live paycheck to paycheck, 2 days' wages is going to be something that's going to hurt you. The third thing is he promises to return. He says, when I come back. He wasn't just leaving. He was following it up. It's mercy that sustains. So where is it that we fail? We've become really good at emergency help, but we're not great at follow-through. So I want to encourage you for the follow-through. Begin to think about that. How is it that you can follow through? How is it that you can step into the next phase? What can you do? Because mercy comes back. Jesus is teaching that real mercy doesn't just respond, it returns. Real mercy follows up. So there's 4 actions. The Samaritan saw, he stopped, he served, and he sustained. I made them all S's. Isn't that good? Is that easier to remember? To see, to stop, to serve, to sustain. 4 acts. And so as we get ready to close today, here's what I want to ask you guys. Here's what Jesus did to end the parable. Did you notice this? He says, you go and do likewise. So he doesn't say, now you heard a good story. I want you to think about this. I want you to pray. What's God? No, he said, go and do likewise. He gave an action. And so that's what I'm going to ask you, not to just feel compassionate. I'm going to ask you to do likewise. Go and be a neighbor that crosses the road. Who can you help? And every week I've been asking, think about somebody in your life or that you've seen, maybe you saw but didn't see. Think about somebody that you can help. 4 movements we talked about today. See, stop, serve, and sustain. And I think as we're just learning to do this, as we're just getting into it, don't try to do all 4 all up front. Pick one. Pick one and do it this week. Make it actionable. Can you see somebody? Can you stop to help? Can you serve them in some kind of way? Maybe you're already doing some of these things, so how can you sustain your help? What can you do to help them? Pick one of these movements and commit to it this week. I mean, if you're feeling ambitious, then do all 4. So here's my 2 invitations today. We're going to have communion here in a little bit. And when we have these communion, I want to give 2 invitations. The first is this. Remember, if you've never received this mercy, we're talking about this and you feel like you're the man in the ditch. You feel like you're the wounded. Maybe you feel like you're laying on the street bloody. You don't know where to turn. You're wondering if anybody sees you. I want to tell you today that Jesus sees you. Jesus sees you. And if you've never experienced the mercy of Jesus, then I'm going to invite you to come and pray this morning. But maybe you're here and you have experienced the mercy of Jesus, and God is teaching you how to be merciful. And you have somebody in your life that you're thinking of right now, and you're like, man, I need to learn to do some of these things. I'm going to invite you then also to spend some time in prayer about that this morning. And as we get ready to do our time of communion here, it could be a reflective time. Remember, I'm talking about practicing His presence. As a spiritual practice, as we take communion this morning, can you spend some time waiting on God? God,